It is Monday, March 4th, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I am Matt Modi with my three favorite NBA player props for today's NBA betting slate. Not the biggest slate of games that we have, but I was able to find three plays that I did really like. Two of the three plays are of the plus money banger variety, which you gotta love. Of course, before we can get into today's picks, let's do a recap of the weekend, which was amazing. I don't know what it is about the weekends, but the past two weekends have been phenomenal. That continued on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, I went 4-0 on my mainline plays, cashing all four of those bangers. Yesterday, I didn't have a YouTube video, but I did post plays both to my Dub Club, and I posted them on Twitter as well. I went 2-1 on those plays yesterday, so we ended the weekend 6-1 on our mainline plays. Now, in terms of ladder plays, the success wasn't quite as good. We did end in the green, which is always positive. Very, very slightly in the green. I got two of my ladder plays to cash over the weekend. Three of them lost. Up literally 0.03 units on ladder plays. But hey, we made money on the ladders. We made a lot of money on the mainline plays. So we will take that. On the entire season, that just continues what's been an epic run. Basically, this entire NBA season, especially since the beginning of the year started. I've just been on fire in the year 2024. On the season, we are up 59.36 units, with ladder plays being up 3.33 units on the year. But keep in mind that I just started tracking ladder plays. It's been a little bit over a week. I started tracking them on February 24th. I used to just give them out, but wouldn't officially track them. People said that I should track them because they had been doing really well. So I started doing that. So it's been an incredible season. I would definitely recommend subscribing if you are not already. And then for this specific video, if you could like, and then most importantly, comment. Let me know your thoughts. If you like the three plays that I had, if there are a couple plays that you like that I didn't have, put all that stuff in the comments and I'll make sure to reply to as many as I can. That's enough about the weekend. You're only as good as your most recent bangers. So let's hope we can have another successful week ahead of us. Starting with our first play, Wizards versus Jazz. I'm taking Colin Sexton over 31.5 points, rebounds, assists. This is at minus 111 odds at FanDuel. So this is going to be the only play that we have on the board that's not for plus money. And I understand for those of you you're watching this, you're thinking, that's way too high for Colin Sexton. And trust me, I get it. But you got to look at the situation here. So yes, on the entire season, he's only cashed in 18 of 61 games. But there are two important reasons why I am on Colin Sexton tonight. Number one is the injuries for the Jazz. Number two is the Wizards defense is an abomination, and it's exactly what Colin Sexton does well. Starting with the injuries. So the Jazz are pretty banged up. Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler are both out for this game. Now, they should be getting Jordan Clarkson back, who's been out a little bit with an illness. But they are going to be missing Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, which will not only hurt the Jazz's defense that's already been a train wreck, which means that the Jazz are going to need to score more, but those are two guys that were ahead of Colin Sexton in terms of the areas in which you want to score to be able to beat the Wizards defense. So the logic here is that with those two guys out, Sexton is going to take over a little bit of a higher usage rate and score more in those areas. Now I'll get into that in general, I'll get into that in a little bit. But in general, the Wizards defense is just an absolute abomination. They are horrific. They have the worst defense in the NBA according to net rating. But because they play at the fastest pace in the NBA, they're giving up the most points, the most rebounds, and the most assists per game in the entire NBA as well. And it's not like they've gotten any better in any of these categories. If you isolate the data since February 1st, they're still giving up the most points, rebounds, assists to teams in the entire NBA. It's just a beautiful combination of a horrific defense that plays at a very fast pace. And obviously that combination leads to just silly stat accumulation against them. Now, in terms of the Wizards defense, and here's where we're getting into the nitty gritty, the Wizards are giving up literally the most made field goals per game in the restricted area. Now, with Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen out, so take those two guys out of the equation, Colin Sexton scores the second most points per game in the restricted area on the Jazz. The only one ahead of him is John Collins. And then going back a little bit further, the Wizards are giving up the fifth most made field goals per game in the paint, but not in the restricted area. And Colin Sexton both takes and makes the most field goals for the Jazz in that area. So he takes the second most in the restricted area. He takes the most in the paint, but not in the restricted area. And that even includes Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. So it's not even the most with those guys out. No, he still takes and makes the most, even with those guys included. Lastly, the Wizards give up the fourth most made field goals specifically from the mid-range. And with Lauri Markkanen out, Colin Sexton makes the most mid-range jump shots on the Jazz. So when healthy, Laurie takes and makes the most. With him out, that now goes to Colin Sexton. So in terms of the matchup, I probably like the points the best, but I did want to add rebounds and assists because those also look really juicy for Colin Sexton. According to Courtside Pal, the Wizards are literally allowing the most assists per game to someone of Colin Sexton's playmaking style, which makes sense as they're giving up the most assists per game to point guards in the entire NBA. And then from rebounds, the Courtside Pal lists the Wizards are giving up the third most rebounds per game to Colin Sexton's rebounding style, which also makes sense because the Wizards allow the third most rebounds per game to point guards in the NBA. So I think his points has the best in terms of the individual matchups, but I like rebounds and assists as well. And in the off chance that he blows up with a ton of assists or a ton of rebounds, I wanted to have some skin in the game on all three. I also put a quarter unit on him to get a double-double at plus 800 odds as well. The most likely scenario is the 10-plus assists, but he could, in the off chance something crazy happens, get there with the rebounds. That's obviously a lot less unlikely, but I at least wanted to get the opportunity for that as well. So official play, Colin Sexton over 31.5 points, rebounds, assists, and then a ladder dart throw on him to record a double-double at plus 800 odds as well. That's our first play. Next up, Wizards versus Jazz game. We're sticking in the same game. Tyus Jones over 10.5 assists, plus 115 odds at DraftKings. So same game, another point guard. This time we're taking with Tyus Jones. We're going with Tyus Jones assists, who should be able to catch this over for us. So I mentioned previously that the Wizards are a juicy matchup when it comes to point guard assists for Colin Sexton. I said that the Wizards are giving up the most assists per game to Colin Sexton's playmaking style. A lot of that same information also applies to the Jazz. The Jazz are another extremely juicy matchup when it comes to point guard assist. And what I like using Courtside Pal is not every point guard play makes in the same way. So yeah, the Wizards are giving up the most to Colin Sexton's playmaking style. Well, guess what? The Utah Jazz are giving up the most assists per game to Tyus Jones's playmaking style. How can that be the case? Because they both have different playmaking styles. And just look at what point guards have done to the Jazz recently. 7 of the last 8 point guards against the Jazz have gone over their assist over-under, including some guys that have just smoked it, just crushed it out of the water. Steph Curry in 2 games against the Jazz. Both times had 10 assists. Both times his over-under was 5.5. D'Angelo Russell, he had 17 assists against the Jazz, and he had an over-under of 6.5. And these two teams just played at the end of January, and guess what? Tyus Jones had 14 assists in that game. So it's just been an absolute dream matchup for point guard assists. Now, I understand the 10.5 number is probably a little bit high for Tyus Jones, someone that you might not know a ton about because he's just rotting on the Wizards, but he's been phenomenal from a playmaking department. He's just been amazing. He's gone over 10.5 assists in 5 of his last 8 games. In the 3 games that he missed, all tough matchups for point guard assists: the Thunder, the Cavs, and the Clippers. And against the Cavs, he had 10 assists in that game, so he was just 1 below cashing what we would have needed for our over. And look at the data since February 1st. Tyus Jones is literally leading the entire NBA in both potential assists and actual assists per game, leading the NBA. So yeah, he's been playing really well, and this is an absolute dream matchup against the Jazz. So I'm very confident he can get us to 11 tonight, hopefully cashing our second play. Next up, our third and final pick of the evening, Bulls versus Kings. And I'm taking Demar Derozan, 25 plus points, plus 125 odds at FanDuel. I know everybody's probably sick of me going with DeMar, or sick of DeMar at this point because we've gone with him in the last 2 games that the Bulls have played. But hey, he's cashed it once and he's lost it once. Now, he did lose it last game and he burned us pretty badly in what was a plus matchup. But I'm going to continue to ride DeMar DeRozan in plus matchups, which is exactly what he has against the Kings. Now, it was bad for DeMar, right, last game. But prior to that, he had been on fire. He had been playing so well prior to that game against the Bucks. He had scored 25 or more points in 5 of his previous 8 games. And in 2 of the games he didn't get to 25, he had exactly 24. So if you wanted to be a little bit safer, you could take the over 23.5 or over 22.5 even and accept worse odds. I thought the best value here was on him to get to 25 plus. So that's what I will officially track. But like I said, if you wanted to be safer, you could do the over 23.5 as well. But either way, that just goes to show you he scored 24 or more points in 7 of his last games and 25 or more in 5 of his last 8. So last game against the Bucks, he just had a bad shooting night against the Bucks defense that admittedly has been playing better recently. I probably should have given more thought to that, but I didn't. So he shot 5 of 13 in that game. Great opportunity for him to bounce back against the Kings. Where does Demar eat? Everybody knows he's the mid-range merchant. He attempts the most mid-range jumpers in the NBA, both on the entire season and since February 1st as well. And the Kings have not only been allowing teams to take a lot of mid-range jumpers, but they haven't been defending it well either recently. Since February 1st, the Kings are allowing their opponent to both take and make the second most mid-range jump shots in the entire NBA. So only the Lakers are worse than the Kings, but they've been really bad defending the mid-range. These two teams just played at the beginning of February, and DeMar scored 24 points in that game. But if you look at that game, he had a bad shooting night. He went 5 of 14 from the floor. So you wonder, okay, how is he even able to get to 24 points? It's because he got to the line 14 times. He could conceivably take another 10 plus free throws because the Kings, since February 1st, are fouling at the 6th highest rate in the NBA. And DeMar has generally always done a good job in his career at drawing free throws. He's been even better recently. He's attempting over 9 free throws per game. In his past 10 games, that's up from his season average, which is about 8 per game. And that doesn't even include the game against the Kings. That 10-game sample size, the Kings game is not included in that 10-game sample size. So yeah, tonight he probably won't get to the line another 15 times, but he probably won't shoot as poorly from the floor either. So when you combine the two, I can easily see him getting 25 plus points. And I think the plus 125 odds is phenomenal value for it. So that's what we're going with. 3 plays, 3 bangers for you guys to lock in. And that's all we got. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'd also recommend following me on Twitter. As injury news gets released, I post more plays over the course of the day. And then the last thing that I'll mention, which I mention at the end of every video, is I do have a dub club. So if you don't want to follow me on Twitter to get plays that I post over the course of the day, you can follow me on Dub Club as well. It's only $5 a month. I will say, anything that you get on the Dub Club, you can get for free, either on YouTube or on Twitter. The reason why I have the Dub Club is just you can get everything immediately texted to you. So if you don't want to watch the YouTube videos, you don't want to wait to see if the odds change or not, you don't have a Twitter, whatever it may be, Dub Club is an easy way to get everything texted to you. My logic being, not everybody either wants to watch the YouTube videos or has time, or sometimes by the time they watch it, the odds change and people were getting frustrated at that. So I added the Dub Club so you could get everything immediately. You don't have to wait until the odds change or anything like that. Or you could just get everything for free on Twitter and on YouTube. Totally fine with me, however you want to do it. But that's all we got. I appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.